Rain slicked the streets of downtown Baltimore, turning neon signs into pools of shifting color on wet asphalt. Sarah Mitchell moved with the kind of precision and quiet confidence that made her blend in while remaining fully aware of everything around her. In her black tactical jacket and worn combat boots, she looked like any other woman walking home after a late shift, but appearances were deceiving. Tonight, that illusion would shatter. Three men loitered under a flickering street lamp, their eyes glinting with predatory intent. Their slow, deliberate circling of her suggested they believed she was an easy target. "Hey, sweetheart," one sneered, a cruel curl on his lips. "Why don't you come over here?" Sarah's pulse quickened, not out of fear but as an alert signal. Her hand brushed against the small baton concealed in her jacket pocket, fingers wrapping around it lightly. She didn't panic. She had been trained for moments like this, for situations where split-second decisions meant survival. The first man stepped closer, towering over her, confidence radiating from every inch of his posture. Then, with shocking speed, he swung a fist toward her face. The punch landed, jolting her head back and sending a shock of pain up her jaw. His grin widened. He thought he had stunned her, but years of Navy SEAL training had prepared her for this. Pain was a distraction, not a signal of weakness. Sarah pivoted her body, using his momentum against him. In one fluid motion, she ducked, twisted, and delivered a precise strike to his midsection. He stumbled, gasping, crashing against the alley wall with a thud that echoed down the narrow street. The other two froze, a flash of uncertainty crossing their faces. They had expected an easy encounter, not a professional response. "I told you not to underestimate me," Sarah said, her voice low, controlled, cutting through the patter of the rain. But the confrontation was far from over. The man who had punched her recovered quickly, lunging again with more aggression. Sarah sidestepped, the fluidity of her movements almost dance-like, and swept his legs from under him. He hit the wet pavement with a hard crack. Pain, surprise, humiliation, it all flickered across his face. The final man hesitated, and hesitation was all Sarah needed. With a swift motion, she disarmed him, sending his makeshift weapon clattering to the ground. Nearby, a few windows cracked open. People peeked out, drawn by the noise and the unusual sight of a lone woman dominating three men in seconds. They whispered to one another, phones lifted, recording. Something extraordinary was unfolding before them, a display of lethal efficiency wrapped in a calm, deliberate veneer. The man who had first punched her scrambled to his feet, glaring at her. Rage, confusion, and disbelief warred in his expression. Sarah's eyes never wavered. Every muscle in her body tensed, ready, anticipating the next move. Navy SEALs trained for unpredictability, and she thrived in it. "You should leave," she said, voice steady, measured, "before it gets worse for you." For a heartbeat, the man considered fighting back. Then, instinct overrode impulse. Fear edged into his posture, replacing arrogance. Slowly, he backed away, pulling the others with him. Within seconds, the three men vanished into the storm-slicked city streets, leaving only echoes of their presence behind. Sarah exhaled slowly, feeling the rush of adrenaline still pulsing through her veins. The throbbing pain from the punch was insignificant compared to the exhilaration of having controlled a life-threatening encounter with surgical precision. She knew the city would remember this brief encounter, if only in whispers, as the night a woman moved like a force no ordinary man could challenge. Then came the sound that made her spine tighten, faint, deliberate footsteps behind her, not running, not fleeing, but measured, close, intentional. Sarah pivoted sharply, instinct screaming, muscles coiled. A shadow materialized at the end of the alley. It wasn't a thug or one of the previous men. It was a man in a tailored suit, moving with a calm authority that contrasted sharply with the chaos moments ago. His presence carried an unspoken command, as if he had already assessed every detail in the alley and found it lacking. "You handled that impressively," he said, his voice smooth but carrying an unmistakable edge. "But we need to talk, and it can't wait." Sarah narrowed her eyes. She didn't know this man, yet she sensed immediately that he was no ordinary authority figure. His gaze was sharp, appraising her as if he already knew something about her past, a past most people could only guess at. "Fine," she replied cautiously, fingers brushing again against the baton hidden in her jacket. "You've got one chance to explain why you're here before this becomes a bigger problem." He smiled just slightly, almost imperceptibly, the kind of smile that suggested confidence bordering on amusement. "You have no idea what's coming, Ms. Mitchell, and it starts right now." Rain pelted them both, hammering against her jacket and soaking her hair, but she barely noticed. Her mind was fully engaged, scanning, anticipating, analyzing. The alley seemed to close in, shadows twisting in the dim glow of neon lights. Sarah's pulse raced in a rhythm familiar to her, preparation for combat, for extraction, for danger lurking around every corner. Then came the sound that froze her mid-step, a faint, metallic click behind her, the unmistakable, chilling sound of a weapon being readied. Sarah's heart tightened. She pivoted slightly, instinct screaming. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting their movement in alternating shadows and light. Her mind raced, calculating options, escape routes, and defensive maneuvers all at once. Her hand clenched the baton. She could feel the grip, the familiar contours of the weapon, reassuring, every seal-trained fiber of her being surged with readiness. This was more than a simple alley confrontation. Whatever was coming next would demand every ounce of her skill, courage, and cunning. The man in the suit didn't flinch. His calmness, almost unnatural, sent another jolt of tension through her. Who was he? An ally or a threat? And why now, why here? Sarah knew the answer would come quickly, and the wrong move could cost her dearly. She exhaled slowly, letting the storm outside mask the tension coiling inside her. Her jaw ached from the punch, her body hums with adrenaline, yet every nerve was focused, primed for action. The unknown weapon behind her was a test, a signal that this night was far from over. Then she noticed something, a subtle shimmer in the man's hand, the glint of polished steel catching the neon light. Not a gun, she realized. Something different, something meant to provoke, to force a reaction. Sarah's mind raced. SEAL training had taught her that perception and reaction mattered more than raw force. One misstep and the balance of power could shift. She had faced life-and-death situations across oceans, deserts, and urban war zones, but even in all that experience, this felt different. It was intimate, personal. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the shadows. Every footstep, every distant rumble, every echo mattered. Every second stretched as if time itself slowed in the alley. The man stepped closer, unhurried, deliberate. "You've been underestimated," he said, voice cutting through the rain like a blade. "And that mistake could have cost you dearly." Sarah kept her eyes fixed on him, baton ready. "Then tell me why you're here before this alley becomes a memory you regret," she replied. A pause. The storm raged on. And then, without warning, a loud crash echoed from the far end of the alley. Something or someone was moving fast, intent on interrupting the fragile standoff. Sarah's breath caught. This was no longer just a conversation. The night had shifted. Danger was no longer a threat to be assessed. It was present, immediate, and unavoidable. Her body tensed, every instinct screaming readiness. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. The calm before the storm had ended. And after tonight, nothing in Sarah Mitchell's life would ever be the same again. The crash at the far end of the alley reverberated off the brick walls, sending a shower of water from the gutters onto the slick pavement. Sarah's gaze snapped to the source, reflexes honed over years of life-and-death missions kicking in before fear could touch her. The alley was no longer just a confined corridor. It had become a trap, a stage where every shadow could hide a threat. The man in the tailored suit, still unnervingly calm, raised a hand as if to halt her motion. "Don't move," he said. His tone carried authority, but also urgency, almost like he was aware of the storm closing in faster than she was. Sarah's eyes flicked back to the sound of movement. A figure emerged, sprinting from the far end of the alley, drenched in rain and hooded, but their intent unmistakable. A weapon gleamed briefly in the dim neon glow. Sarah recognized it instantly. Not a firearm, not yet, but the glint of steel in the hands of someone with intent was just as deadly. Instinct screamed. She didn't hesitate. She lunged sideways, rolling over the puddle-slick pavement as the first figure lunged forward, a blade aimed at her side. Her body twisted mid-roll, baton extended in one smooth motion. The attacker collided with her elbow, staggering backward as her baton connected sharply with his shoulder. The alley erupted into chaos. Rain spat like needles against the walls, echoing every grunt, every metallic clash. Sarah's mind worked faster than her heart. Each strike, each movement was calculated, efficient, designed to neutralize rather than maim. Every training module she had endured, every sleepless night of drills, flashed through her memory like a rapid montage. The suited man moved too, but differently. Less combat, more calculated precision. He didn't strike. He observed, stepping just enough to remain relevant, alert to the smallest change in the alley's dangerous dance. Sarah felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the clarity that only came when survival hung by the thinnest of threads. Another attacker emerged from the shadows, this one larger, more aggressive. He swung a metal pipe, the movement wide, careless, assuming strength alone could overwhelm her. She met his momentum with a pivot, redirecting his swing and using his own force to send him stumbling forward. Her baton struck again, aimed at pressure points, disabling joints, until the man crumpled to the wet ground. But there was no time to celebrate. The first attacker recovered, lunging again with the blade. Sarah's arm shot out, knocking it aside, but the effort left a faint scrape across her forearm. Pain stung, but it sharpened her focus. She spun, catching him with a precise strike to the solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping, the wind knocked from him. Her breathing remained steady, controlled, an outward calm belying the storm raging inside. This was more than self-defense. It was survival against multiple assailants who underestimated her. Then the suited man spoke again, his voice calm but urgent over the pounding rain. "Sarah, behind you, left side." She pivoted just in time to catch another figure, hidden by shadows, attempting a silent approach. Her elbow drove upward, striking the attacker's chin with bone-crushing precision. The sound echoed, almost theatrical, against the brick walls. Sarah's gaze flicked toward the suited man. His presence was still mysterious, but she realized he wasn't her enemy. Not exactly. He wasn't attacking, yet he hadn't stopped the chaos either. His movements suggested a plan, a subtle orchestration that she couldn't yet decode. The attackers were relentless, but Sarah was faster, sharper, anticipating their every move. She ducked under a swing, rolled, struck, and in moments, the three new threats were incapacitated, groaning on the alley floor. And then a pause. Everything froze for a heartbeat. Rain hit the puddles with a hypnotic rhythm. The suited man stepped forward, finally close enough that she could see his face clearly under the streetlight. His expression was unreadable calm, but eyes scanning her, studying her. "You're remarkable," he said, almost conversationally, "but you don't know the half of it." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "Explain now." He glanced down the alley as if weighing his next words against the invisible threat still lurking in the storm. "There are people watching tonight. People who know who you are, what you've done, and what you can do. They're not here for a fight. They're here to test you, to see if you're ready for what's coming." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Test me. By sending 3 thugs, then a dozen more. Who are they? Who sent them?" He hesitated for the first time, a flicker of something, respect, maybe caution, passing across his features. "Not who," he said. "Why, and it's bigger than this alley, bigger than tonight. You've been off the grid too long, Sarah. Some things thought they were buried aren't." Her jaw tightened. Memories surged unbidden, covert missions in hostile territories, operations that demanded secrecy, people she'd saved, or failed to save. The past she had fought to leave behind was surfacing in the most violent way imaginable. "Enough talk," she said. "I've survived worse than this. If there's more coming, let them try. I won't fail." The suited man's eyes narrowed slightly, almost approvingly. "Good. That's why you're still alive." Before Sarah could respond, another sound cut through the rain, a low, metallic hum, almost imperceptible until it grew into a mechanical whirring. From the shadows, two black SUVs emerged, tires splashing water, headlights barely piercing the storm. Figures in tactical gear spilled out, moving with military precision. Sarah's instincts screamed. These were not ordinary attackers, not criminals, not thugs. This was an organized operation, trained, armed, and coordinated. And judging by the precision of their movements, they knew exactly what they were doing. The suited man's voice was calm but urgent. "Get ready. They're testing your limits tonight, and trust me, you'll need everything you've got." Sarah's eyes darted between the advancing operatives and the suited man. Every muscle in her body coiled like a spring. Her SEAL training kicked in fully now. Threat assessment, tactical positioning, attack patterns, escape routes, all calculated in microseconds. The first figure lunged forward, but Sarah was faster. She sidestepped, striking with the baton in a swift arc. Another attacker advanced from the shadows, knife raised. She disarmed him with a twisting motion, sending the weapon clattering across the slick pavement. Chaos reigned. The alley became a blur of movement, shadow, and rain. Sarah moved with the lethal grace of someone who had faced death more times than most people had breathed. Each strike was precise, each dodge calculated, each breath measured to conserve energy for the inevitable endurance test that awaited. Suddenly, a hand clamped down on her shoulder, spinning her around. But it wasn't an attacker, it was the suited man. He leaned close, voice urgent. "Listen, you can't take them all head-on. There's a way out through the fire escape behind the old warehouse. Follow my lead, trust me." Sarah hesitated for a fraction of a second. Trust was earned, not given. But instinct screamed that he was right. Every second wasted would cost her. She nodded just slightly. "Lead the way." The suited man moved with precision, and Sarah followed, her baton ready, senses stretched to the limits. Behind them, the operatives advanced, relentless, unaware that the prey they were pursuing was far more dangerous than they could imagine. The storm raged on. Rain soaked through her jacket, cold biting at her skin. Yet adrenaline burned hotter. Each step, each turn, each calculated strike was a testament to survival, skill, and a life forged in the most extreme crucible of all: war, secrecy, and death-defying missions. As they reached the warehouse, a new sound made Sarah pause, a whisper of movement above them. The fire escape creaked under unseen weight. Someone or something was waiting. Sarah's pulse spiked. "We're not alone," she murmured, gripping her baton tightly. The suited man's eyes flicked upward. "I know, but that's part of the test." Her mind raced. Every scenario, every contingency flashed before her eyes. The rain, the shadows, the approaching enemies, all converging on one single truth. The night was far from over, and the real danger had only just begun. And then a metallic clang echoed from the roof above. Something was dropping, something fast, something deadly. Sarah's breath caught, and every instinct screamed at her. Fight, survive, adapt. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was stepping into a storm designed to break her, and she knew with certainty, if she failed, she wouldn't just lose this fight. She might lose everything she had fought to protect in her life. The fire escape above groaned ominously under invisible weight. Sarah's pulse quickened. Rain streamed down her face, her jacket plastered to her skin, every movement sending a ripple of cold through her bones, but she didn't flinch. Her eyes scanned the shadows above, tracking the subtle shift of the metal railing, the faint flicker of movement that could have been anything. A person, a weapon, a threat designed to test her reflexes. The suited man beside her whispered, "Don't look down. The drop isn't what matters, it's what's coming next." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Explain now." He shook his head slightly, almost apologetically. "You'll have to see it to survive it." Before she could react further, a metallic object dropped from the roof above. A flash of silver caught her eye, a jagged makeshift blade, spinning dangerously as it fell toward the wet concrete. Sarah dove instinctively to the side, rolling into a puddle that drenched her entirely but kept her from being impaled. The blade struck the ground with a harsh clang, spraying water across her face. "Good reflexes," the man murmured, barely audible over the pounding rain. "But that's just the warm-up." Sarah pushed herself up, dripping water, muscles coiled, eyes locked on the shadows. Every instinct screamed threat, danger, death. She had survived firefights in deserts under gunfire, ambushes in dense jungles, and midnight operations where the margin of error was non-existent. But nothing prepared her for this. An urban maze turned into a lethal game, orchestrated with precision. Movement above her caught her attention again. This time it wasn't a drop, it was deliberate. A figure emerged on the rooftop, masked, clad in tactical gear, and armed with a long rifle. The weapon swiveled in her direction, the barrel glinting under the storm-smeared lights. Sarah didn't hesitate. SEAL training surged through her in an instant. She pivoted, using the suited man as cover, and rolled behind a steel dumpster, her eyes never leaving the sniper. The first shots rang out, thudding into the alley walls around her. Bullets ricocheted, spraying sparks and water, narrowly missing her by inches. The sound was deafening, rain bouncing it back like a drum of doom. The suited man moved with calculated precision. He didn't attack, didn't strike. He simply repositioned, subtly guiding Sarah while also scanning for hidden threats. She realized for the first time that he was not just an observer, he was a strategist, a chess master, gauging every move, every response, every instinctive reflex of hers. Sarah's mind raced. There were too many attackers, too many unknowns, too many variables. One wrong move and this alley, the supposed haven, would be a tomb. She gritted her teeth and remembered every lesson drilled into her during Navy SEAL training. Fight smart, use the environment, anticipate, adapt. She spotted her first opportunity. A narrow gap between two dumpsters would allow her to flank the rooftop sniper, closing distance while minimizing exposure. But to get there, she needed a distraction, something to make the sniper shift focus even for a fraction of a second. Her eyes landed on the discarded pipe lying in the puddle nearby. She grabbed it, feeling the slick metal in her grip, then hurled it with precision. The pipe clanged against the fire escape, a sound loud enough to draw the sniper's attention upward. His aim wavered, and that was all Sarah needed. Rolling from cover, she sprinted toward the gap. Rain soaked her to the bone, muscles burning, but every step was purposeful, every breath controlled. She felt alive in a way only true danger could bring, adrenaline flooding her body, focus narrowing to a pinpoint, mind and body moving as one. Another shot rang out and she dived to the side, feeling the bullet graze the metal dumpster beside her. Sparks flew. Her heart hammered, but she didn't flinch. She couldn't. Survival left no room for hesitation. Reaching the gap, she scaled the first short barrier with explosive agility, her baton ready. Her hands gripped the wet metal railing, muscles straining as she hauled herself upward. Water streamed down her face, stinging her eyes, but she didn't stop. Not now, not ever. From above, the sniper cursed, attempting to track her movements. Another figure appeared on the roof, a second operative, this one armed with a combat knife, descending the fire escape. Sarah's mind ran through options in milliseconds. She had to neutralize the immediate threat while preparing for the unknown above. Her baton lashed out in a precise arc, striking the descending figure's wrist. The knife clattered to the wet rooftop, the attacker stumbling backward. With a swift kick, she sent him off balance, ensuring he landed hard, face first on the wet roof tiles. He groaned but remained conscious, a warning to any others who underestimated her. The sniper, still aiming, didn't notice the suited man moving behind her. He had scaled part of the fire escape silently, now flanking the sniper. In one fluid motion, the man leaped, striking with a baton of his own. The sniper dropped the rifle, scrambling for balance, giving Sarah the opening she needed. She surged forward, her body coiled like a spring. Every SEAL skill, balance, reflexes, precision strikes, tactical awareness was in play. Within seconds, the sniper was disarmed, the rifle slipping from his hands, spinning across the rooftop. But Sarah knew better than to celebrate. One threat neutralized didn't mean the fight was over. She scanned the rooftop, eyes narrowing as she spotted movement across the edge, more operatives, shadows shifting, weapons glinting in the stormlight. This wasn't just an attack. This was a calculated assault, meant to test her every limit. The suited man's voice cut through the rain, calm but urgent. "Go now, through the maintenance ladder. It leads to the service corridor. Keep moving." Sarah didn't hesitate. She followed, muscles screaming, rain blinding her momentarily, yet focus sharp as a blade. The service corridor promised cover, a way to regain the advantage. She knew the alley below was now a killing zone, and the rooftop still teemed with threats. Every decision counted. As she descended, she caught a glimpse of one attacker preparing a secondary rifle, aimed at the alley entrance below. Sarah froze for a split second, calculating risk versus opportunity. Then, with the precision of a professional, she hurled a piece of debris from the roof, knocking the weapon aside and forcing the operative to lose his balance. The corridor below was narrow, metal walls closing in, but it offered safety for now. Her breathing came in controlled bursts, muscles tensed, eyes scanning every corner. Rainwater dripped from above, pooling in her boots, but she felt nothing except the sharp focus of survival. The suited man paused beside her, eyes scanning the corridor. "We've slowed them," he said, voice low. "But this is just the beginning. They want you to panic. They want to see how you respond when trapped." Sarah's jaw tightened. "I'm not panicking, I'm preparing, and I don't fail." A sound from the ventilation shaft above made them both freeze. Something, or someone, was moving through the ducts, silent but deliberate. Her pulse spiked. Even now, after everything, she felt the rush that came from facing overwhelming odds. Every muscle, every nerve, every instinct screamed readiness. The suited man nodded toward the shaft. "Get ready. This is where it becomes real." Sarah's hands tightened on her baton. Her Navy SEAL training had brought her through worse situations. Combat in hostile territories, extraction under fire, survival when hope seemed lost. But nothing in her past had prepared her for a coordinated assault like this. A test designed to measure not just skill, but instinct, strategy, and endurance under extreme pressure. And she knew deep down that failing this test would mean more than just defeat. It could mean death. She inhaled, exhaled, and stepped forward. The corridor was dark, narrow, and silent, except for the faintest whisper of movement above. Sarah's eyes narrowed. She had survived a punch, an ambush, a sniper, and multiple attackers. Now the real test awaited, and whatever was coming next, she would face it head-on as she always had. The storm outside howled, lightning illuminating the metallic walls, and in that stark, fleeting light, Sarah realized. Tonight, everything she thought she knew about survival, trust, and danger was about to be rewritten. The corridor was narrow, metal walls glistening with rainwater, echoing every footstep with unnerving precision. Sarah's heart pounded, but her breathing remained controlled. Every muscle in her body was coiled, ready for sudden, lethal action. The faint whisper from above, the ventilation shaft, was deliberate. She knew instinctively that this was no ordinary stalker. These were highly trained operatives, professionals who had been watching her every move. "Above us," the suited man whispered, his eyes flicking to the vents. "They've got drones too, cameras, sensors. This is designed to test your focus." Sarah didn't flinch. She had faced ambushes in deserts, dense jungles, and hostile urban zones. She had fought through darkness, enemy fire, and close-quarters combat. But this confined corridor, the vent above, the storm pounding outside, was something different. It wasn't just physical skill being tested. It was her mental fortitude. Her ability to anticipate, adapt, and survive against multiple unknown variables. A shadow shifted in the vent. Sarah's pulse spiked, adrenaline sharpening her senses to a razor's edge. She crouched low, baton ready, listening intently as the faint metallic scuffle above indicated movement. Then she heard the telltale click of a small mechanism, possibly a trap or a weighted device, drop down to slow her. Before she could react, a thin, sharp object shot through the vent opening, narrowly missing her shoulder. She rolled forward, rainwater splashing over her, and the baton lashed out in a swift arc, catching the incoming projectile midair. Sparks flew where metal collided with her baton, a stark testament to her reflexes. The suited man moved beside her, silent and precise. He didn't speak, didn't interfere, only subtly guided her, his presence like a shadow anchoring her in the chaos. Sarah realized that, although she didn't fully trust him yet, his experience was undeniable. He was trained, tactical, calm, a master of controlled combat, much like herself, but operating on a different wavelength. Another projectile shot from the vent. This time, Sarah was ready. She deflected it, spinning into a crouch and scanning the ceiling. Her mind raced, calculating trajectories, distances, the rhythm of movement above her. Each pulse of adrenaline only sharpened her reflexes further. Then she heard the hiss, a chemical release from the vent, a faint mist that filled the narrow corridor. It was fast-acting, meant to disorient and slow her. Sarah covered her mouth with her sleeve instinctively. She could smell the faint, acrid tang of the gas, a mixture designed to disrupt breathing, focus, and coordination. "Move," the suited man urged. "They want panic, don't give it to them." Sarah's eyes narrowed. Panic was a luxury she couldn't afford. Her Navy SEAL training had prepared her for far worse: hypoxia, toxic gases, extreme environments. She dropped to a low crouch, moving forward in short, precise bursts, keeping her head low while assessing exits and blind spots. A shadow dropped down from the vent. One operative, clad in black tactical gear, landed lightly but silently on the corridor floor ahead. His knife glinted under the flickering fluorescent light. Sarah's reaction was instantaneous. She pivoted, swinging her baton in a wide arc that connected with his wrist. The knife clattered to the floor, but he was still moving, lunging again. She sidestepped, her elbow catching him in the midsection, sending him stumbling backward into the wet metal wall. More movement followed from above. Two more operatives began to descend, using harnesses attached to the vent shafts. Sarah's heart raced, but her mind remained icy calm. She adjusted her stance, turning the confined space to her advantage. Every strike, every dodge, every movement was precise, calculated, efficient. The corridor became a blur of black figures, swinging knives and metallic clangs as baton met weapon. Sparks flew, echoing through the tight space. Rainwater dripping from the vents splashed onto the floor, making footing precarious. Every step, every dodge, every breath had to be measured perfectly. Then, just as quickly as the chaos had erupted, there was a pause. Sarah stood, soaked, muscles burning, heart pounding. One operative lay incapacitated, another slumped against the wall, while the suited man silently disabled a third with a precise strike, sending him tumbling into the shadows. "You're handling this well," the man said, voice low but carrying a weight of respect. "But it's only going to get harder." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Who are they? Who sent them?" The suited man's gaze didn't waver. "People who know what you've done, what you're capable of. They want you to fail because failure means death or worse. They're not after a fight tonight. They're after the truth. And the truth about you is more dangerous than you think." Sarah's jaw tightened. The weight of his words hit her. This wasn't random. This wasn't street-level aggression. This was organized, premeditated, and deeply personal. Someone knew her past, knew her Navy SEAL record, her covert operations, her successes and failures, and they were willing to risk everything to see her tested. She inhaled, exhaled. Then let's finish this, I don't fail. A low rumble echoed through the corridor. Sarah tensed. The storm outside had intensified, and now she could hear the distant roar of engines, vehicles approaching. Not random traffic, but coordinated. The operatives were reinforcing. They weren't done. Movement above again. This time a shadow dropped a device, a small metallic cube that rolled across the floor toward her feet. Sarah kicked it aside instinctively. It clicked. The sound was unmistakable, an explosive trap triggered by pressure or proximity. The suited man nodded subtly. Good reflexes, but keep moving. Every second counts. Sarah moved quickly but with calculated precision, using the corridor's narrow walls to funnel the attackers, controlling the fight with both her mind and body. Her Navy SEAL training kicked in fully. Threat assessment, tactical movement, improvisation. Every instinct sharpened, every reaction honed to a deadly edge. Suddenly, a figure dropped directly in front of her, a final operative, masked, knife raised. Sarah didn't flinch. In one fluid motion, she ducked under the knife, spun, and delivered a precise strike to his solar plexus, sending him crashing to the floor. The metallic echo reverberated through the corridor, drowned partially by the storm outside. The suited man approached her, voice low. Not bad, but there's more coming. You've survived the initial ambush, the rooftop sniper, and the vent assault, but they're testing your limits physically, mentally, emotionally. And this next phase. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. It's why you were targeted in the first place. Sarah's pulse tightened. Every hair on her body stood on end. The fight had been brutal, relentless, testing her skills to their absolute limits. But the suited man's words hinted at something even more dangerous. A truth, a mission, a secret from her past that someone wanted silenced or revealed. She gripped her baton tighter. Tell me, she demanded. Why me? Why now? The suited man's eyes flicked toward the vent shaft, then back to her. Because, Sarah, some things from your past weren't buried, and those who buried them assumed you were gone, but you survived. You always survive, and that makes you the only one they fear. Sarah exhaled slowly, letting the calm of control settle over her. Every inch of her body was exhausted, muscles burning, but adrenaline still surged through her veins. She had faced overwhelming odds before, and she had adapted, survived, and overcome. Tonight was no different. But now, for the first time, the fight was no longer just about survival. It was about truth, about uncovering why her past missions, her covert successes, and the secrets she carried had made her a target. She glanced down the corridor. The storm raged outside. Shadows twisted in the corners, and above, the vent shafts whispered with hidden movement, silent but deadly. Sarah tightened her grip on her baton, her eyes narrowing. Whatever came next, she would be ready. Navy SEALs didn't just survive. They dominated, adapted, and struck with precision when least expected. And tonight, she would prove why. The corridor stretched ahead, dark and slick with rainwater that had leaked in from the storm above. Sarah's boots splashed quietly as she moved, baton raised, every sense on high alert. The storm outside was relentless, wind howling against the warehouse walls, rain hammering the metal roof like gunfire. Each sound echoed ominously through the tight space, masking subtle movements and threats that might be hiding in shadows. The suited man moved beside her, silent, a shadow within the shadow, scanning every corner, calculating every possibility. They're organized, he said softly, and they're escalating. You've survived initial tests, but this next stage, it's designed to break you. Sarah's eyes narrowed. Break me? She asked, voice steady, even under the weight of exhaustion and the sting of adrenaline. I've survived sniper fire, rooftop drops, ambushes, chemical irritants, and multiple assailants. I don't break. The man didn't reply, only nodded toward the end of the corridor. There, the metal doors of a service room were slightly ajar. A faint red glow seeped through the crack, flickering in sync with the storm's lightning. Sarah approached cautiously, her baton-ready senses attuned to the faintest sound. Every instinct screamed caution. She had learned the hard way that danger was rarely obvious. It hid in plain sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The suited man whispered again. Inside is a pressure chamber. They've rigged it to collapse if triggered incorrectly. Think of it as a test. Solve the puzzle or be crushed. There's only one solution, but you'll have to use your mind as much as your body to survive. Sarah felt a chill, but it didn't shake her. She had faced impossible scenarios before, complex extractions, covert operations behind enemy lines, and situations where survival depended on instinct, training, and split-second decisions. This was no different. She pushed the door open slowly. Inside, the room was small metal panels lining the walls, a faint hum echoing like a heartbeat. Pressure plates were scattered across the floor, each one likely rigged to a deadly trap. A faint mist lingered, the scent faintly acrid, chemical deterrents designed to slow her reflexes and decision-making. Sarah's eyes scanned every angle, calculating the risks. One wrong step, one misjudged move could trigger the plates, but she had trained for precision under pressure. Every step, every movement had to be deliberate. She stepped forward carefully, testing the first panel with the tip of her baton. Nothing. A small exhale escaped her lips. Then another panel. A faint hiss, a barely audible click, but no detonation. Her mind raced. Pattern recognition, she murmured to herself. Her Navy SEAL training kicked in fully. Identify variables, predict outcomes, neutralize threats. She moved like water, rolling over and pivoting around the plates, finding the safe path through the deadly puzzle. The suited man watched silently, impressed. "They've underestimated you," he murmured. "Most would panic and fail in seconds." Sarah ignored him, eyes fixed on the final panel. One step separated her from the exit, one miscalculation could be fatal. She inhaled deeply, focusing her mind on rhythm, weight, and timing. Then, in a fluid motion, she advanced, baton tapping the edges of the panels as she moved, signaling safe passage with each precise step. The final panel loomed. She measured her movement, recalibrating with the shifting weight of her boots and the slick metal floor. Then she placed her foot firmly, and nothing happened. A sigh of relief escaped her, but she didn't stop. The door beyond led to another corridor, dimly lit by flickering overhead lights. But she knew the tests weren't over. These operatives were methodical, intelligent, and obsessed with testing limits. The red glow now intensified, casting long shadows that danced on the walls. A sudden metallic click echoed behind her. Sarah spun just in time to see a trap door slide open, releasing a mechanical arm armed with a small blade. Reflexively, she ducked, baton striking it with a controlled blow that shattered the mechanism. Sparks flew, metal screeched, and the air filled with the smell of ozone and burnt wiring. The suited man stepped beside her. "This isn't just physical endurance," he said. "They're testing your mental fortitude, fear, fatigue, decision-making under duress, everything. And they've studied you." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Studied me?" "Yes," he replied. "Your missions, your tactics, even your habits, they've prepared specifically for you. That's why this isn't random, it's personal." She absorbed his words, adrenaline sharpening her focus. "Then we adapt, we survive, and we finish this." The corridor ahead opened into a larger room, a makeshift command center, cluttered with monitors, wires, and glowing screens. Operatives in tactical gear monitored displays, unaware that Sarah had already spotted them. She grinned faintly, a surge of confidence replacing the sting of exhaustion. "Time to get their attention," she muttered, moving with the quiet precision of a predator. The first operative didn't see her coming. A precise strike from her baton incapacitated him before he could react. Another tried to draw a weapon, but Sarah disarmed him with a twisting motion honed over years of SEAL training. Sparks from damaged monitors illuminated the room as chaos erupted. The suited man followed, moving silently, neutralizing threats with precision that rivaled her own. Together, they became an unstoppable force, a combination of reflex, strategy, and lethal skill. But the fight wasn't over. A massive screen flickered to life, displaying multiple angles of the facility, and Sarah realized the enormity of the operation. They were being watched, not just by the operatives in the room, but by someone else. Someone who wanted this documented. A voice crackled through the speakers, distorted but unmistakably commanding. "Impressive, but this is only the beginning. Ms. Mitchell, we know who you are and we know what you've done. Your past cannot stay buried. Prove your worth or it will define your end." Sarah froze, the weight of the words sinking in. This wasn't just a test of skill. It was a psychological assault, designed to force her into revealing herself, to strip her of control, to expose the secrets she had fought so hard to protect. She exhaled slowly, muscles tense, heart pounding. She had survived ambushes, rooftop snipers, chemical traps, and complex mechanical puzzles, but this was different. This was personal. And then the monitors revealed something that made her blood run cold. Photos of her past missions, detailed maps of operations she had carried out in hostile territories, and dossiers on people she had saved, or failed to save. Someone knew everything. Someone had been watching, planning, and preparing for this moment. The suited man's voice broke her focus. "This is why they fear you. You're not just a soldier, they can't predict you, and that unpredictability makes you dangerous." Sarah's eyes hardened. "Then I'll prove them wrong, as I always do." She moved forward, baton raised, eyes scanning the room, calculating escape routes, neutralization points, and contingencies. Each step, each movement, each strike was precise, deliberate. She was not just surviving, she was taking control. And she knew one undeniable truth: the night was far from over. Whoever orchestrated this was powerful, methodical, and patient. They had prepared this test to break her, but Sarah Mitchell wasn't someone who broke. She exhaled, eyes scanning the room, muscles coiled, mind razor-sharp. The next move would determine not just survival, it would reveal the first layer of the conspiracy that had hunted her across the city. Her Navy SEAL instinct screamed one thing: fight smart, anticipate, dominate. And tonight, she would prove why no one could underestimate her. The command center hummed with electricity and tension. Screens flickered, displaying the alleyways, rooftops, ventilation shafts, and corridors Sarah had already traversed. Every move she had made, every tactic, every decision, it was being observed, cataloged, analyzed. Her jaw tightened as she realized the scale of the operation. Whoever had orchestrated this had studied her life down to the smallest details. Nothing had been left to chance. The suited man moved beside her, quiet, controlled. His eyes flicked across the room, assessing, calculating. "They know you," he said finally, "but they don't understand you." Sarah's gaze sharpened. "And if they don't understand me," she asked, her voice low but cutting. "They underestimate your instincts, your experience, your unpredictability. That's why you're still alive." Her pulse raced as her mind absorbed the implications. This wasn't a random assassination attempt or a street gang looking for leverage. This was a carefully orchestrated psychological and physical test, designed to challenge every part of her training and mental resilience. And the person behind it wasn't just competent, they were brilliant. A faint beep drew her attention to the largest monitor, the one in the center of the room. A face appeared, a man in his 40s, impeccably dressed, sharp features, eyes cold and calculating. His image flickered, the voice distorted but unmistakably commanding. "Sarah Mitchell," he said, the words cutting through the storm outside and the hum of the electronics. "You've always been remarkable, admirable even, but your past missions, they've become inconvenient truths, secrets some of us thought were buried." Sarah's pulse spiked. She had known some of her missions were classified at levels few even dared to approach, but to be personally targeted, someone was holding a grudge or a vendetta. The suited man murmured beside her, "That's the mastermind. He's the one orchestrated this entire sequence. Every trap, every operative, every test was his design." Her eyes narrowed. "Why me? I completed those missions years ago. I was off the grid. Why bring them now?" The man on the screen smiled faintly, almost smugly. "Because survival isn't enough. Your skills, your decisions, your moral compass, they're a liability to some people. They think you know too much, that you can't be controlled. And people like me, we don't like uncontrollable variables." Sarah's grip on her baton tightened. The realization hit her. This was not about vengeance. It was about control, influence, and silencing a threat she had never even been aware existed. Her mind raced, connecting dots. The ambushes, the meticulous planning, the tracking of her missions, all meant to provoke, destabilize, and ultimately capture or eliminate her. The suited man beside her spoke softly but firmly. "This is where your advantage lies. He has studied your methods, but he can't anticipate your intuition. Your unpredictability is your weapon." Sarah's eyes scanned the room, her tactical mind already formulating options. The operatives in the command center had guns, advanced surveillance, and chemical deterrence at their disposal. But the room itself had vulnerabilities: wiring, structural weaknesses, blind spots. Every trained operative had a limit. Her voice was calm, steady, deadly precise. "Then we take control. We turn the observation into opportunity. He thinks he's orchestrating this like a game, but the game is mine now." The suited man's eyes flicked toward her. "Exactly. But remember, Sarah, the moment you act recklessly is the moment he wins." The room was silent except for the soft hum of electronics and the storm pounding the warehouse roof. Sarah moved first, silently advancing along the shadows of the room, using the flickering lights and cables as cover. Each step was calculated, each movement deliberate. She spotted the nearest operative monitoring a bank of screens and disabled him with a swift, precise strike to the neck, sending him slumping forward without a sound. Her eyes scanned the monitors. She realized she could manipulate the camera angles, creating blind spots, turning the very tools of observation into her advantage. The command center, meant to monitor and control her, was now a battlefield she could dominate with precision. The suited man moved behind her silently, neutralizing a second operative. "Keep moving. Don't let him see you," he whispered. Sarah's mind was a whirlwind of calculation and instinct. She knew the mastermind's psychological tactics. They thrived on surveillance, intimidation, and pressure. But he hadn't accounted for one critical variable: Sarah Mitchell. She had survived ambushes, rooftop sniper fire, chemical traps, and mechanical puzzles. Now she would exploit his hubris. She accessed the nearest terminal, fingers moving swiftly over the keyboard, rerouting camera feeds, creating blind zones, and sending false data to confuse the operators. Monitors flickered erratically. Some went black, others displayed looped footage. The operatives were momentarily disoriented, giving her the edge she needed. A sharp sound behind her made her pivot. A third operative, armed with a combat knife, lunged. Sarah didn't flinch. Her baton met the attack with a controlled block, snapping the man's wrist and sending him crashing into the wall. Sparks flew from exposed wiring. The mastermind's face on the screen didn't change, but his voice grew sharper. "Clever, but not clever enough." Sarah's pulse quickened. He knew she was in the command center. He could anticipate her, monitor her moves, and yet he couldn't predict her next action. She took a deep breath, centering herself. Every muscle, every instinct, every ounce of training converged into one single objective: turn the hunter into the hunted. She scanned the room again. Wiring ran along the walls, panels were loosely secured, and the monitors themselves contained explosive sensors designed to incapacitate intruders. But she had trained for scenarios like this. every tactical response, every improvised weapon, every environmental advantage memorized and ready. With the suited man covering her flank, she moved toward the central terminal. Using her baton, she struck a panel, causing sparks to fly. The operator inside the terminal stumbled back, and Sarah used the moment to sever critical connections, isolating sections of the control network. Alarms blared, red lights flashed. The mastermind's plan was unraveling. A final operative lunged at her from the shadows. Reflexively, she sidestepped, delivered a precise strike to the shoulder, then swept the legs, sending him crashing to the floor. Every movement was deliberate, lethal, and efficient. The storm outside intensified, lightning illuminating the warehouse in stark white flashes. The mastermind's face on the screen remained calm, but Sarah sensed his irritation, his calculated control slipping as she dismantled his operation piece by piece. Then she found it, a final monitor displaying a secure line, the person at the other end, the one orchestrating every test, every ambush, every psychological trap. She accessed it, her fingers flying over the controls with trained precision. The screen blinked, then stabilized. And there he was, the mastermind himself, sitting in a sleek office, overlooking a city Sarah had never been aware was being used as his stage. His eyes met hers directly through the camera, cold, calculating, unnervingly calm. "Impressive," he said. "You've survived everything, but do you know why?" Sarah didn't answer. Her mind raced. She had dismantled his control room, neutralized his operatives, and yet the question remained, why target her now after all these years? He leaned forward slightly. "Because your past isn't buried. Your missions, your successes, your failures, they've created liabilities, and some people want them exposed. You are the only one who can stop it." Sarah's jaw tightened. She realized the true scope of the challenge. This wasn't just a test of survival. It was a battle for secrets, for lives, and for control over knowledge that could shift power in ways few could imagine. She exhaled slowly, muscles tense, heart pounding, mind razor-sharp. Every instinct, every skill, every lesson learned over years of Navy SEAL missions converged into one singular focus. She would not just survive. She would dominate, she would take control, and she would confront the mastermind face to face. The suited man leaned close. "The next step is critical. One mistake and he wins. Are you ready?" Sarah's eyes narrowed, baton raised, body coiled. "I was born ready." Hum of the command center filled the warehouse like a heartbeat, steady but sinister. Sarah's eyes flicked across the room, assessing, calculating, prioritizing. The mastermind's face glared from the largest monitor, his cold, calculating eyes hiding nothing, and yet revealing everything. He thought he controlled the night. He had no idea how quickly his control was slipping. The storm outside battered the metal roof, water dripping in uneven patterns, adding a chaotic rhythm that masked the faintest of sounds. Sarah moved like a shadow, baton raised, boots silent against the slick floor. Every operator she had neutralized earlier lay unconscious or incapacitated, but her eyes remained sharp, always searching for threats, for weaknesses, for openings. The suited man followed silently, a coiled presence beside her. He had been her guide, her shadow, her support, and now, in the heat of the confrontation, she realized he trusted her instincts implicitly. Together, they were a force the mastermind had underestimated. "Do you know what he wants?" Sarah asked, voice low but steady. Her baton tapped softly against a steel cabinet, sending a subtle vibration through the floor. "To expose you," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper. "To dismantle your past missions, ruin your reputation, and leverage your secrets against you. But he doesn't understand one thing, your unpredictability." Sarah's jaw tightened. Then it's time he learned. She moved toward the main console, eyes scanning the screens that displayed multiple camera angles across the city, operatives in hiding, and data feeds linking every mission she had ever undertaken. The mastermind had meticulously archived her history, analyzing every decision, every success, every failure. He had turned her life into a playbook. But Sarah had something he hadn't anticipated: improvisation, intuition, and the ability to see beyond the obvious. She approached the console, baton extended, and with a swift motion, severed the primary feed linking the operatives to the surveillance system. Alarms blared, red lights flashing, but she remained calm. The sudden chaos was an advantage. The suited man moved to cover her flank. "They'll be looking for your pattern. Don't give them one." Sarah nodded, pivoting. She moved strategically, stepping between cameras that flickered uselessly, exploiting blind spots she had created moments ago. Every movement was calculated, every step designed to put her in the position of dominance. From the shadows, a new operative appeared, a larger figure, armed with a tactical rifle. Sarah's pulse didn't quicken. She was in full control. She feinted left, pivoted right, and delivered a strike with her baton that disarmed him instantly. He crumpled silently. The mastermind's voice crackled over the speakers. "You're clever, Sarah, but cleverness won't save you from what's coming." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "It won't save you either." She accessed the secure line to the mastermind's office feed, the screen flickering under her touch. His smug expression remained, but she detected subtle tension, small, almost imperceptible micro-expressions that betrayed his confidence wavering. He thought he had engineered the perfect trap, designed to psychologically dismantle her. But in doing so, he had exposed himself, his patterns, his over-reliance on control. Sarah's mind raced through options, contingencies, and possibilities. She realized she could turn the hunter into the hunted, not just by physical force, but by strategy, manipulation, and exploiting his ego. "Keep the cameras active," she murmured to herself, fingers flying across the keyboard. "Let him see everything. Let him believe he's still in control." Red lights bathed the room in an eerie glow. The storm outside mirrored the tension inside, chaotic, unpredictable, and escalating. Sarah's muscles coiled, every nerve alert. She had survived ambushes, rooftop snipers, chemical traps, and mechanical puzzles, but this was now chess at its most lethal. The suited man leaned close, whispering, "Remember, he thrives on fear and pressure. Exploit it." Sarah's lips curved into a faint smile. "Oh, I intend to." Suddenly, the air shifted. Another operative emerged from the shadows, this one faster, more precise, attempting a stealth attack. Sarah pivoted, baton striking with lethal precision, but the man recovered quickly. They clashed, a blur of steel and motion, until she delivered a final, devastating strike that left him unconscious. The suited man moved to disable another operator, and Sarah realized the room was now hers. She had turned a death trap into a stage for her own tactics. Her eyes returned to the screen. The mastermind leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Impressive," he said, "but the final test will cost you everything." Sarah's pulse spiked. "I've already survived everything you've thrown at me. I'm ready for whatever comes next." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the warehouse in stark white. The shadows twisted, the storm roared, and Sarah realized the psychological component of the confrontation was about to peak. The mastermind's final weapon wasn't bullets, traps, or operatives. It was information. Secrets, lies, deception. She had to act fast. She accessed the encrypted files he had compiled on her past missions, every operation she had ever commanded, every risk she had taken. She scanned through the dossiers, analyzing vulnerabilities, anticipating how he intended to manipulate them. And then she began to turn the tables, creating false logs, fabricating movements, and feeding him misinformation designed to confuse, mislead, and provoke mistakes. The mastermind's reactions were visible in real time. Subtle shifts in posture, narrowed eyes, and tight fists betrayed irritation and doubt. He had assumed total control, but Sarah's improvisation had created chaos within his empire of observation. Suddenly, a final operative appeared, armed with dual knives, moving for a coordinated strike. Sarah didn't hesitate. With fluid precision, she pivoted, delivered strikes to both attackers, and neutralized them in moments. The room fell silent except for the storm and the hum of the damaged electronics. She turned back to the screen, eyes locking with the mastermind. "You underestimated me," she said, voice steady, controlled. "I survive, I adapt, and I dominate. And you relied too much on control." The suited man nodded beside her. "Now," he whispered, "finish this. End it on your terms." Sarah's fingers hovered over the final controls. One move would lock the mastermind out of the entire surveillance network, cut his operatives off, and give her the upper hand. She could end this here on her terms, not his. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the screen, the storm, and the tension that filled the room. Every muscle, every nerve, every instinct screamed readiness. She pressed the key, severing his access, and the monitors went black, except for his face, frozen in shock and fury. For the first time, Sarah had full control. The hunter was now the hunted. The storm outside raged, lightning illuminating the warehouse. The mastermind's empire of observation, planning, and psychological warfare had crumbled, and for the first time, he faced the consequences of underestimating a Navy SEAL. Sarah's breath came in controlled bursts. Her body ached, her muscles burned, but her mind was razor-sharp. She had survived, adapted, and dominated. But the mastermind was still out there, and the night was far from over. Her eyes narrowed. The final confrontation awaited. The storm outside had reached a frenzied crescendo, rain hammering the warehouse roof, wind howling through broken vents, and occasional flashes of lightning illuminating the scattered debris. Inside the command center was a controlled chaos. Monitors flickered, wires hung loose, and the bodies of incapacitated operatives lay in shadows. Sarah Mitchell stood at the center, soaked to the bone, muscles burning, baton in hand. Every nerve in her body was alive, every instinct honed to razor-sharp precision. She had dismantled every trap, every operative, and now she faced the last variable, the mastermind himself. The suited man beside her whispered, calm yet tense, "This is it. No more games, face him, but remember, he's brilliant. Don't underestimate him." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "I never underestimate anyone." A hidden door slid open at the far end of the room, revealing a long, sleek corridor illuminated by sparse red lighting. At the end, the mastermind waited, impeccably dressed, his expression unreadable, eyes cold and calculating. The faint glow from the monitors behind him highlighted the sharp contours of his face, making him appear almost sculpted, predatory. He spoke, voice steady, controlled, carrying a weight of command. "Sarah Mitchell, remarkable as ever, I've watched you adapt, improvise, and dominate. But do you know why you're here?" Sarah's grip tightened on her baton. "Because you underestimated me." A faint smirk curved his lips. "No, because your past, your decisions, your successes and failures, they threaten my control. You've saved lives, yes, but in doing so you've created chaos for others. People who prefer obedience. People who think the world should be predictable. You are unpredictable, and unpredictable things must be neutralized." Her jaw tightened. The truth had been partially revealed before, but now the full scope hit her. This wasn't just personal. It wasn't vengeance. It was power, control, and manipulation. Her past missions had created variables he could not control, and that terrified him. The suited man whispered, "He's dangerous because he can't anticipate your moves. But he's clever, Sarah. Watch for traps. Everything he says is designed to provoke, mislead, or distract." Sarah nodded subtly. She had trained for this. Every mission, every ambush, every hostile environment had taught her one thing: control the situation, control the outcome, and never give your opponent the upper hand. The mastermind stepped forward, hands raised slightly in a gesture of calculated calm. "I could end this right now. You fought admirably, but the outcome is inevitable. Submit, Accept that your past is mine to manipulate. Sarah's eyes narrowed, voice low, controlled, yet burning with intensity. You don't get to dictate my past. You don't get to control me. Tonight this ends on my terms. He tilted his head slightly, intrigued. Bold, dangerous. I admire that, but dangerous people make mistakes. Sarah's pulse tightened. Her muscles coiled like springs. Every instinct, every training module, every tactical simulation she had internalized over years of Navy SEAL service converged into one singular focus. Neutralize him without hesitation, dominate the encounter, and survive. Lightning flashed, illuminating the corridor, casting the mastermind in stark relief. He lunged suddenly, attempting a precise strike with a concealed blade. Sarah pivoted, baton connecting with his wrist, snapping the weapon away in a shower of sparks. She rolled into a crouch, using his momentum to sweep his legs and send him crashing to the floor. He recovered with frightening agility, springing to his feet. But Sarah was ready, anticipating, calculating, predicting every micro-movement. She moved like a predator, baton striking, footwork precise, blocking his attacks while exploiting his openings. Every strike, every dodge, every motion was instinct fused with years of lethal training. You're fast, he said, smirking despite the obvious struggle. But speed isn't everything. Neither is control, she replied sharply, especially when you've lost it. The fight intensified, a blur of motion, sparks, and metal. Each strike she delivered forced him back. Each evasive move demonstrated her mastery over space, timing, and technique. Sweat mixed with rainwater, muscles burned, but adrenaline and focus sharpened her senses to an almost preternatural edge. Suddenly, the mastermind reached for a concealed device at his belt, a panic button wired to the building's remaining explosives. Sarah's mind raced. Seconds mattered. She feinted a strike, then swept low, knocking the device from his hands. Sparks flew, a faint alarm echoed, and the tension ratcheted to near unbearable levels. You're clever, he admitted, voice strained. But cleverness alone isn't enough. I don't rely on cleverness alone, Sarah said, voice steady, eyes locked on his. I rely on action, precision, and instinct, all of which I've honed for years. The final exchange was swift, brutal, and precise. She disarmed him, immobilized him, and delivered a calculated strike to ensure he could no longer threaten her. He collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily, eyes wide with disbelief. The suited man moved forward, assessing the situation. It's done, he said quietly. You've taken control. The mastermind's network, his operatives, his plans, they're all neutralized. Sarah exhaled, muscles trembling with exhaustion, heart pounding, but her eyes remained sharp. It's never really over, she said, voice low. But tonight we win. The storm outside had begun to subside. Rain still fell, but the violence of the tempest mirrored now the intensity she had conquered within. Every ambush, every trap, every threat, the nightmare that had stretched across rooftops, alleys, ventilation shafts, and command centers, was finally behind her. She approached the mastermind, looking him squarely in the eye. You wanted to control my past, but you forgot one rule: the past belongs to me, always. He said nothing, defeated but alive, a lesson in hubris, control, and underestimating the unpredictable. Sarah turned, the suited man at her side, and stepped toward the exit. The warehouse, once a labyrinth of terror, now felt empty, conquered, subdued. As she emerged into the rain-soaked night, the adrenaline began to ebb, leaving only clarity and resolve. She had faced death, betrayal, manipulation, and overwhelming odds. She had survived because she never hesitated, never panicked, and never surrendered. The storm cleared, revealing the first stars of dawn. Sarah Mitchell, Navy SEAL, survivor, and master of her own destiny, walked into the light, knowing one undeniable truth. No force, no mastermind, and no secret could ever take control of her, not while she had the will to fight, the skill to adapt, and the courage to survive. The city stretched before her, silent in the early morning as if acknowledging the storm she had conquered. And in the distance, the faint echo of the mastermind's failure reminded her of a lesson she had always known. Power may create enemies, but skill, instinct, and courage can conquer them. Sarah took a final deep breath, shoulders straight, eyes forward. The night was over, the fight was hers, and as always she had survived and dominated.